and welcome to the Dark Souls podcast.
Isn't it called the Daft Souls podcast?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I thought that.
I've done it wrong. This
is your podcast.
No, leave that in, Matt. It's good to know.
I'm joined tonight on the Daft Souls podcast by John Blyth, aka Log, aka Disappointment.
John Blythe, Donald Log. I'm a nightmare, a branding nightmare.
You are, but
Who
at
am
least
I?
you remember what your bloody name is. And also joined by the lovely Aoife Wilson.
Hello, you alright?
I'm good. I'm alright. It could be better. Not a great start to the podcast.
Jesus.
I know, right? I've already got this problem in the fact that I probably shouldn't have called it the Daft Souls podcast because, A, lots of people think it's a bad name for a podcast. I think it's a fun
I think
one.
it's fantastic.
I've only just found out now, having heard you say it rather than speak it in a hangout, that it's Daft Souls.
Daft, yeah.
What did you think
I'm a
it
Daft
was?
man.
Yeah.
I would say Daft, which kind of ruins the phonetic similarity to
Yeah,
dark.
I know. I'm actually bad because I used to go live in the north, and so I feel like I've actually abandoned my northern twang to do this. But also because lots of people don't listen to this podcast because they think it is just about Dark Souls, which is not going to be helped by me introducing the podcast as a Dark Souls podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, have you guys played any games this week?
Well, I've been playing Trials Fusion. I'm probably not... If you're going to put this podcast out tomorrow, I'm probably not allowed to talk about that. But you could use it as a springboard for talking about Trials in general. And I could maybe tie in my experience of Trials Fusion preview to effectively talk about it.
In a way that isn't embargoed.
In a roundabout kind
In
of
a way that's indistinguishable from a review, but isn't actually embargoed.
Seems
politics.
like
Seems legit.
Seems legit. So what about those motorbikes, eh?
Oh, well, not just motorbikes.
Oh,
From the
really?
preview event I went to, which isn't embargoed, there's also a quad bike now.
Which handles exactly the same.
On a side-on game? How is different?
It handles exactly the same. A four-wheeled heavy monster of a vehicle that you have to land flat instead of on the back wheel. I think that handles rather uniquely.
I
Aoife.
see.
Don't be disparaging about physics things.
Don't be disparaging about
I'm just playing devil's advocate, okay?
No, it's just a different machine. It's like, it's not a world of change for the game.
Well, yeah, does it actually change things up all that much?
Well, no, it's the same game. But that's a fantastically replayable game. So it's the same game on a console that didn't. I've been playing on Xbox One, and that console doesn't have a Trials game, and every console needs a Trials game.
Well,
it's
that's the
fucking
thing,
brilliant.
because I came really late to Trials. Like, I started playing Evolution after everyone else on
Same.
my friends list had finished it, but I still, I got so into it, because it's the kind of game you can pick up when you have 10 minutes rather than an hour. And, I saw everyone else on my friends list had already racked up, times on it, and I was just like, I spent, evenings trying to fucking best them, even though they were done with it, and they'd never look at it
But that's
again.
brilliant.
I had the opposite in the fact that I started playing it, and I think it was Mr. Pointy Head.
Yeah.
Okay, damn right.
Oh, him and Mike Channel from
Yeah,
Outside Xbox.
Yeah.
and they're
They
just
are
fuckers.
bastards.
They were just so good. It was them and their friend Al, actually. Al X.
Yeah, X.
They were great at it, and it really annoyed me because I was like, I was trying to get into the game, and it was just constantly rubbing my face in the fact that it's like, hey, by the way, everybody else you ever met is infinitely
better than you.
And it's like, I think that curve of not having the ability to go neck and neck at any stage just made me think, I can't be fucked.
Well, I
It's so
found that
Moorish, though. It's so Moorish.
especially when it usually drops you with some people better around you on the leaderboard. It gives you the ghosts of people who are slightly worse as well, so you do feel like you're in the middle of a pack.
Yeah.
That always happened to me. Perhaps I'm just better than you, Matt.
No, it's true.
I'd hate to say.
I had a feud with Jane Douglas that she doesn't know about, but she kept besting me, and I got really pissed off with her. And she knows now, but it was her ghost was just
I'll tell you what, there was what game was it that used to reward you points when if somebody tried to beat your ghost and failed? Was it Blur or was it something else? I don't know. No, it was SSX.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The kind of reboot that I actually really enjoyed.
I loved that game.
But it was a shame because it just sort of came out at a point at which there wasn't really a demand for a snowboarding game.
But it was so much fun.
It was
for
great.
Fuck's sake. You could grind on the fucking rail of a helicopter while it was still in motion. It was just fantastic.
I thought it was a really, really good little reboot, and I love the way it didn't have the multiplayer. It just had this sort of constant connection multiplayer, so you'd see the ghosts of other players competing for the same thing. It was it kind of made a good point because people went, there's no multiplayer, it's rubbish. You can't race against 8 people at the same time. But it's no, because actually when you're trying to perfect tricks and the last thing you want
don't want
is
that
some
pressure.
dickhead to crash into you. It's fun when you're sitting playing snowboard kids or whatever with other people, because it's like you can punch them. You can be like, oh, you fucker, you knocked me off my snowboard. But if it's not a game with like power-ups and bonuses, you don't want people to get in the way of you when you're trying to perfect the perfect line or whatever.
I think when other people are there, you're automatically, you go into competitive mode, whereas like, it, you know, that you're trying to get to the bottom as fast as possible, whereas obviously with SSX, you just want to, you want to get as much airtime as possible, you just want to be like doing all that instead.
But some of the ideas in that game were genius. Like, I love the way that what it would do, for those who don't know, is basically you'd have a go, you'd set a record, and there'd be like loads of different competitions you could take part in. And they would have like bounties. And they basically say like, you pay this much to enter this competition. Not real money, it was, you know, fictional cash or whatever. But then it'd be like, you pay a large amount to enter. And then, depending on what tier you ended up in, at the end of like, sometimes they were a day, sometimes they were a couple of hours, sometimes they were like a week. It would then split the cash. So like, the top percentage would get loads, and then below that less, and it was basically encouraging you to like try and get into a tier. So you might finish playing and you'd be like, you're in the gold tier, you're going to earn approximately this much, and you're like, wicked. And then you go on a few days later and it's like, yeah, now you're in the silver tier because there are more people who've beaten your score,
and you're just like,
and so you'd be like, okay, and you go back, and it was a clever idea. But also it had this thing of like the fact that when somebody had tried to beat your score and failed, you could actually do this thing where you could challenge somebody else and go, I'm trying to beat their score. For every time somebody had played on a time trial and failed to beat your race time, you would just earn money. You would just accumulate like money for other people who were your friends trying to beat you and failing. And it was wonderful because I remember logging on, I think it was on the demo actually, and just logged on and it was like 60 people have failed to beat your time, or 60 attempts in total. And it's just like, there's nothing more satisfying than knowing that the's some poor Berks just somewhere going, God damn it, I can't beat them. And it's great.
What a petty victory to have in your head that is.
It brings it out in you,
no, because
it's the game's fault.
It is, but also
it's like 60 simultaneous victories hitting you at once. It must be a majestic feeling, that.
It's not just that, right? It's part of the defense mechanism in the fact that, you know how you have those bastards who you're in a pub and they'll be like, oh, beat your high score on that the other day. Oh, yeah. And you're just like, all right, cool. And like, oh, yeah, no, I beat it. Yeah. You thought it was really good and I beat it. You'd be like, yeah, all right. It's so much more satisfying when you go, yeah, you did beat my high score, but you spent 4 hours doing it. Like, because you know exactly how many times they failed. So people just
so if the same person fails 60 times, you get... I mean, oh my God, that is a bit of a grassy snitch. I don't like that.
I mean, those 60 attempts were probably only about 3 people.
It'd really put me off actually attempting to beat anyone though, because I just would feel that shame of fucking hell.
I just love it, because people can't brush it off and go, oh yeah, I beat it. Must have been my 3rd attempt or whatever. You'd be like, no, actually, won't stand up in court.
I earned millions from you eventually beating my score.
But I just love that. I mean, I don't know. It is, as you say, a bit vindictive, but... I enjoyed that a lot.
Was it a hard game to get hold of? Because I remember when it came out, I was trying to find it on places.
Really?
Just because I wanted to buy it, because like I didn't feel like I had any reason to go to PR, kind of a copy of your game, please. But no, I just found it really hard to buy, to the point where I never bothered in the end. Like,
I don't really know what happened with it. It reviewed really well. I think I
remember you were there reviewing it.
I was
next to me.
I was. I loved it. I really loved it. I had so much fun with that game.
It just kind of disappeared, didn't it? Really, nobody ever talked about it again.
I don't know what happened with it, and it's a shame because I remember chatting to the lead developer on it a lot, and he was a really, really smart guy. Like talking about the mechanics and how they chose to do stuff. He was like super on it. I'd love to see what he ends up doing next.
It's gutting because like Tricky is one of those games that people just go, "Oh, it fucking define me." A brilliant game.
Yeah, you even hear that little like soundbite now, and you're just like, yeah.
And Tokyo Megaplex is fucking blazoned into my head. Like, but yeah, why now? Just no interest.
I think that was very much what they did that year, though, wasn't it? EA. That was the year of
Syndicate and SSX and Kingdoms of Amalur, and that was pretty much it.
Kingdoms of Amalur was a fucking odd one. I really feel bad about Kingdoms of Amalur, actually. It's like, it makes me feel guilty when I think about it, especially because of all of the shit that resulted and happened to the studio and the people who worked for it. Because I think I reviewed that game.
Did you?
If I didn't, then I previewed it
quite extensively
and like kind of gave it a bit of a kicking. Like every time I talked about it, I was like, "This is pretty shit." And I kind of basically, I was, you know...
weren't you in this position in the... this was in the OXM office when you were doing this, weren't they? Because there was you and there was Edwin as well. And Edwin, the online editor of OXM, was all really upbeat and optimistic about all the different kind of attack styles and stuff you could do.
Yes.
So we had that internal sort of disagreement, and you were the one that shot on it and then destroyed a developer? Is that what happened?
Is this how it happened? So it was something like that, yeah. No,
It didn't strike me as that awful. I remember interviewing Todd McFarlane at the time, and he was like, yeah, it's going to be the best. Like, I mean, he's an entrepreneur, right? He's going to fucking hard sell anything that he's involved with. But, like, he was just like, yeah, it's going to have fucking everything. It's going to be amazing.
Because that's what makes a good game. Fucking everything. We're not going to draw any boundaries around our game or even define it. It is everything.
No, but literally what he said in the interview was it's going to have the biggest fucking dragons you've ever seen. I was like, Todd, no, I'd like to test that theory, like, to be honest.
It didn't. And this is where my guilt comes in.
It actually had a tiny 1 foot tall dragon in the end.
I don't recall there being big dragons in it, frankly. But no, the thing was, I didn't savage it. I just sort of like, I ribbed it repeatedly for a long period of time of basically being like one of those examples of RPGs that are just weirdly massive and empty. And it did have a fun combat system, but it was quite basic.
I never played it. It was quite MMO-like, wasn't it? In terms of fetch questy, kill 10 of this bollocks.
There was going to be an MMO using the same world.
That's my understanding, yeah.
The single-player campaign was just like stupidly massive. Like, it had more quests than you could shake a really big dick at, and it was like, it just went on forever. And I didn't look at half of it, and there was no reason to, because most of the quests were just so boring. And it had like had some wonderfully weird moments where I remember there's this one guy where he was talking about how he was bleeding to death, and his animation was entirely standard, just human there talking. There was nothing, no look of pain, no hobbling or whatever, but he had this sort of constant jet stream of blood. Just splurting out of nothing, like just blood, like just coming out of nowhere.
Well, I'm quite a stoic race. I'm a dwarf. We are a stoic breed. We don't show pain, but yes, I really am bleeding quite profusely.
It was insane. It was this thing of like, I was like, the splurts of blood coming out of him are crazy. I left it on the dialogue option for ages, knowing that as soon as I ended the conversation, he would promptly die. Yeah. But I was like, how long can this guy bleed for? This is one of these things I wish I was like video capturing at the time, because it was like, this is amazing, this is hilarious, what the fuck is this game? But I completed it. I completed it of my own volition.
Wow.
I must have spent about 40 hours.
But that says something about it.
I know, and that's why I feel so guilty, is because as a journalist, I was kind of like, this is a boring game, it's not really worth your money. But then, left to my own devices, I fucking played it a lot.
Yeah.
And I didn't really enjoy it, but...
It's the drama that's happened, like, since its launch, though, that's kind of made it a bit more interesting.
That made me feel more
really bad, yeah.
Because there was just something...
Didn't they need to sell, like, an insane amount to even cover it back? What they needed to do to even make the money back was just... Then everyone had to have a copy in the world.
It says a lot about... I think the thing for me that sums up that whole game is the fact that the name of the actual game was Reckoning. And Kingdoms of Amalur was
meant to be a franchise.
So the game was just called Reckoning, and they kept saying, "Oh, it's Reckoning. It's not Kingdoms of Amalur. It's Reckoning. Kingdoms of Amalur is just the setting. There's going to be loads of Kingdoms of Amalur games." And it's like, okay. But then when it came to actually printing the discs, the press discs, I think they'd misspelt Kingdoms of Amalur on the promo copies. So it kind of, there was that disconnect between the belief and how much EA actually really cared.
Oh, bless.
It was a bit...
The King Kongs of Amalur.
I think they spelled Amalur wrong or something. I think it was Amalur. I don't know. But yeah, anyway. Diving back to Trials really briefly, I think...
Oh, yes.
I know, that's
what we were talking about.
I kind of felt like it's because I played too much Joe Danger. I feel like a lot of people who play Joe Danger after Trials struggle to get into Joe Danger. And it's because they're totally different games. But I had it the other way around. I played so much Joe Danger that it was then like the same core of how you control the bike is there, but it's totally different.
I think the two are easily distinguishable enough in my brain for me not to worry about thinking I'm playing the other one.
Well, no, it's not that. I think it's more expectations. Because I found the thing that I loved about Joe Danger was the fact that you could be really hardcore about it, but if you felt like you were being shit, you could just be like, I'm going to collect the gold stars today. Like, I'm not going to try and do the big things. Whereas Trials is like, what are you here for? And it's like, I don't know, no, you're not. You're here to try and get the best score ever. You've got to do this. It's impossible. I'm like, can I just drive the bike around for a bit?
And that's one thing I do like about Trials Fusion is that that it's also been that was also public knowledge is the challenges.
Caveat.
Here are my favourite public knowledge facts.
Here are the things that I'm allowed to tell you about it. Yeah, it's every level this time has 3 sort of explicit challenges that you can use to sort of. It's another reason to go through the game and just ignore those arsehole ghosts who are better than you. So yeah, it's just this is like. I'm amazed how much stuff they managed to tuck away hidden in levels that are effectively just 2D planes. It's like they do manage to conceal some.
Like what?
Well, it's hard to say. Like, you just find a platform, or there's a jump that you realise if you take it at a slightly different speed, you'll land on a little branch lower down, and then there's a whole new area level down there that you. Or you land on a platform that's hidden, it catapults you into the air, you land on a blimp, and there's a fucking warp zone up there. And like. It's got a weird difficulty spike. Hang on, I'm going into review territory. I'm going to shut up.
The review klaxon.
Sorry, I am not reviewing Trials Fusion.
Not now. Not never. Potentially at some point when the embargo breaks.
Within 3 or 4 days of this, you hearing this.
But for you, the listeners, we are going to hold off that so you don't have to put the podcast on a huge embargo.
But I really enjoyed the preview. I can say that much.
Oh, that's fine then. What have you been playing this week, Eva?
So I'm in a kind of weird place right now. I'm in the process of moving house, so all my stuff is currently in boxes. So the only thing I've played in the last couple of weeks has been The Wolf Among Us Episode 3, which I reviewed yesterday, and Final Fantasy VII on the Vita.
I read your review of The Wolf Among Us 3, actually. I was very tentative to click on any links, but I kind of felt like yours would be safe and not spoil it for me.
I'm careful not to
I know
spoil
you are,
anything.
yeah, that's why I read it. But it was like, because the amount of times I've actually reviewed the first couple, and then it was like, I've been like, read some other reviews, and it's like, you're the fucking...
It's really hard not to, because especially with something like that that's so I mean, you can't review the game without reviewing the story, but you know there is a way of doing it, but you have to be very careful.
I was exactly the same thing today, actually. Somebody was for the Q&A video I do every week, somebody asked me about how I feel about episodic games, or whether they should be reviewed like as a whole or as each one, and it reminded me when I was answering it of like when I was reviewing the Walking Dead games for OXM, which ended up being this like ridiculous, almost like mental riddles of like, how can I explain like the tone of this episode and what happens without mentioning any characters or events or saying anything that could spoil anything, and you end up like using really weird
you use really weird turns of phrase, and then you sort of start writing something and you get really into the flow of it, and then you just sort of write yourself into a grammatical cul-de-sac where you're just like, no, gotta reverse out of here, this isn't gonna work.
It's the sort of thing where it's like they just become these weirdly kind of semi-useless reviews that will like specifically only be of use to people who have played the episode before, but not this one.
But it's kind of a weird thing, because personally I only read reviews after I've played a game, because I just quite like collating opinions on things.
That's absolutely, yeah.
But I know that's not, I mean, obviously it's a bit different for me, because I play a lot of stuff anyway.
I don't do that with games so much, but I do it with movies and stuff.
I do that all the time with movies
and TV reviews.
Like, as soon as I come out of the cinema, I always look up, reviews and sort of opinion pieces on what I've just watched, because I just really enjoy that.
I just remember Breaking Bad lurching from like the final episodes of season 5. You just go.
We end up sharing stuff and all. You're like, you have to read this.
Oh my god! The last of the episodes are 3 different endings that they all had. Oh, have you had this theory?
Oh my God, yeah.
There were so many fucking theories for Breaking Bad. Here's my theory. It's just really fucking good.
Yeah. I enjoy watching it. That's my overarching universal theory of Breaking Bad. It's good.
But how do you feel overall about the walking? Actually, no. Just say. I mean, probably the easiest way to do it is how do you feel so far about The Wolf Among Us as a whole thing?
So as a whole thing, and it's interesting you mentioned about sort of episodic reviews, because we actually had this discussion today that we're going to start rolling episodic reviews into the one thing that we just update continually rather than doing separate things.
That's smart.
But I as a series, I love it. I mean, I absolutely it looks phenomenal. It sounds amazing, and because I'm a fan of the comic books, like I think all the characters are really, really well done. However, I think it's this thing with Telltale now. They're starting to fall on their own sword a little bit, in that the more you play of them, the more the mechanics are starting to show. Like you're starting to see the cracks in how they actually work. Like the 3rd episode is, I don't even think it's the weakest thus far, but it's just because I've played the previous 3 that I'm starting to realise my choices don't matter as much as I thought they did initially.
Yeah, that's the thing. The sense of dread when it says he'll remember you said that.
Yeah, and then you
That's
realise...
fading. I don't... Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I think for me the big problem is it felt like they were doing something different with The Wolf Among Us, and now I'm not sure because it felt like in the first episode there were a lot of choices.
Yeah.
And some of them were major choices. And I was kind of like, oh shit, they've actually done it differently. Because obviously in The Walking Dead, I realised quite early on that it was like, the choices don't matter.
Right.
But that's fine, because it's more the fact that you know that lots of these characters are going to get really fucked up.
Yes.
And so having somebody really, really hate you before they die is actually quite impactful, because it's that thing of like, you don't want somebody to hate you.
Yeah, of course.
And so you then end up like feeling bad because they hated you.
The thing is, so they seem like they're trying different things. Like in the most recent episode, they give you, they say that you've got a deadline, and they say you've got 3 avenues of investigation that you can go down, but you can't go to all 3. And then by the end of it, I did go down all 3. So it was like, well, you know,
and that's a classic adventure game. There's 3 things you have to do before you reach the next bottleneck.
Yeah,
it's just that they did this. They even took the piss out of that when they did Sam and Max the first season. So like,
it's just a really, I mean, it's disappointing when you realise, because you're so emotionally invested in these characters, as I was from the outset, to know that actually it could just as easily be anyone playing this game. My Big B is no different from your Big B, you know?
What really disappointed me about the second episode, because I was so hopeful. After the first episode, I thought, wow, this is fucking awesome. Because you say it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
The art direction, it's like the first episode is just so
amazing.
Fucking cool. And I knew nothing about Fables, the comics. And for those of you who don't know, it's just a general gist. It's like all of the fairy tale characters from, like, any fairy tale, pretty much.
Pretty much any fairy tale, yeah.
All lived in this one place.
They've been ousted from their world and thrown into our world. So there's kind of like a little community, they're just sort of ferreted away in New York City. And it's an amazing sort of concept, because they sort of invert all the sort of old fairy tales. So Snow White is like a really sort of bitter divorcee, because Prince Charming went off and fucked her sister, and stuff like that.
It's like it's like basically it's an amazing idea. It's like the idea that time has passed, and it means that now things are not the way they were, because it's like there's been
they're all really
years.
Jaded, and
heroes have become jaded because fame wore off, and some of them became alcoholics and stuff because people didn't love them anymore, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
And it's like the way it all ties together, like the wolf from Red Riding is the same wolf from the Three Pigs story. Like,
and there's actually a really great moment in this episode that I really loved, and I hope it's not a spoiler for saying it, but there's an old woman character, and you kind of have a confrontation with her as Big B and Snow White, and she turns to them and says, I'm an old woman, the men play the heroes and the women play the sluts, and I have to look on as everyone else sort of plays their part, and I'm just sort of this useless thing, that is a narrative device, if nothing else. And it's just like, that's quite cool, actually. Oh, nice. Yeah.
But it's funny, because with the second episode, it did this thing where it just felt very much, as you were saying about how you're not playing my big, you're playing somebody else's.
Yeah.
The second episode, I felt like and this is my main worry with Telltale now, is the fact that because they've had like such a kind of colossal pat on the back for The Walking Dead, that they're now like, hey guys, maybe we could be like, people who make like TV.
Let's do it. Why don't we do it for Game of Thrones and Borderlands too? Let's do this. Let's do this for everything.
Well, it's more that they've forgotten what made it special, and it's like with the second episode in particular, it felt very much like, hey, you love us because we make great narratives, so why don't you just sit back there while we tell you a narrative? Because there was so little interaction in the second episode, and there was a bit towards the end where it really annoyed me, because it was like, it was just trying to egg you on to like do stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't being like having choices, it was like, do this, come on, do this. And it's like,
it's weird. I don't feel like there's anything I've done that's had the same I've only played the first 2 episodes of Wolf Among Us.
That's what I'm talking about. So
but like there doesn't feel like there's been any sort of situation where I've had the same pitchforking thing from The Walking Dead, where you got the 2 brothers and I had that same, I chose to kill that guy, she saw me, awful.
That's the thing as well, because Lee was a completely new character. You really could see that he could go either ways. Big B is, he already has a reputation by the time you're entering the story, and everyone treats him as such no matter what you do. And I said this in my review, like, my Big B, I feel, is quite compassionate. He's a bit rough around the edges, but he wouldn't do anything bad, and I've been acting that way from the entire episode, or the entire series, and everyone still treats him like he's he's just a bastard.
Fair play. I was going to say, because when you said earlier, I don't feel like this is my Big B, I was going like, well, you're dealing with a existing character, how much do you want to change that character from the comic book? But the fact that your choices aren't being reflected, that makes sense.
Exactly,
the other major problem with the whole existing characters is the whole time I feel like I'm playing with the safety catch on. And the fact that in The Walking Dead, it, like, regardless of how true it often was, you knew that death would be a big part of it. And you weren't sure if it was your fault or not, but you know, it didn't fuck about when it came to killing people because you'd done things, or seemingly. Whereas in this, I mean, especially like, I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything if you haven't played it, but there's something that happens in the first couple of episodes that just makes you think like, oh, fuck you. And it's one of the things I hate about comic books in general, is the fact that they've got themselves into a really nasty habit of making mortality seem irrelevant.
Is this the dramatic thing you thought happened didn't actually happen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it's like, from that point onwards, I was kind of like, oh, really? Fuck you.
The interesting thing about that is, you say you haven't played the comics, so I actually really praise that moment because it deviates very, very dramatically from the comic book canon. And I was like, oh, right, okay, Telltale are taking the series and they're putting their own spin on it, and then they just turn around and go, nope, actually, you know, we've heard
because they were like, oh, it is canon. It's like, well, why is it canon? Why don't you do like, I mean, actually, I love what the Walking Dead TV series does. I used to think the Walking Dead TV series was boring as piss, but now I've watched more of it, I really like it. But I love the way that
it's gone through its boring as piss moments. It really has.
Yeah. But I love the way that it's like, it's not the comics.
I gave up on it because of those moments, but
but it's like, it's not, you know, it's not obsessed with being canon, whereas this is. It clearly like, and you kind of think nothing exciting is going to happen because
they're so rigidly,
And I'm really concerned. My biggest concern with Game of Thrones is that they're going to use characters from the TV shows.
See, so this is my idea for the Game of Thrones, and how they would circumvent that is if they base it around the Night's Watch and they just make up their own characters for that, because I think like that you could sort of have.
And it keeps you away from all the main characters. It gives you like this. They're stationed all across the wall, so you could have just an unknown fucking area.
No, there's only 3 of the towers are staffed on the.
Is it true? Well, 3 towers. Well, that's not Jon Snow's not there.
There's like 12 or something.
Well, you could have fucking David McCormont or whatever he's called.
No, but they're like really, like the only one that's really got anyone there is the main one. But you've got Shadow Watch and stuff. I know way too much about this.
Thanks for not drawing me up on mentioning David McCormont, the gay pop singer, as one of the bosses of the Night's Watch.
He gets around.
But you're right about comic book canon. Like, it does seriously hamstring like a lot of. I mean, like that's why I loved the Batman Arkham games, because they weren't afraid to play around with that. Like, they were respectful to a degree, but they weren't afraid to sort of go off and make their own. I mean, the Arkhamverse is completely separate.
It's a combination of being given carte blanche to do that, and also, I mean, I think the difference is like with Batman, you can do that. It's established well enough that you can be like, hey, want to make a Batman game, and we're going to fuck around with all the villains. We might kill some of them, and they can be like, yeah, whatever, because you can still be like, it's a Batman game. What worries me about the Game of Thrones game is it's like, do they feel that they're going to be able to sell a Game of Thrones game that doesn't have all Game of Thrones characters in it?
Well, you can have them as sort of background quest givers, like just have the scene with someone you recognise, and then you go off and do your mission, and it's you on your own.
Well, that's the thing. I remember, like, I reviewed it for XM actually, the Game of Thrones RPG, and that was
oh god, wow.
No, I really liked it.
Really?
It was terrible. It was one of the worst things I've ever played, but I really liked it.
I like the treatment of sex scenes in that as well.
Oh, how did they do it?
Well, there was just idle animations in a brothel.
Lovely.
Yeah. I mean, like, it was like mechanically shoddy as fuck, but it was weird that they started developing the game, because I interviewed one of the guys from Cyanide, I think, and they started making the game like when it was just the books and the TV show didn't even exist. And then as they got towards the end of development, the TV show became a really big thing. And so they then put a couple of like likenesses in the game, like Jorah Mormont, the guy in charge of the Night's Watch, and the Queen.
Cersei was there as well.
Yeah. But it was like an afterthought, and then it was a really, I don't know, the opening was terrible, and I think it was actually one of the guys from Rock Paper Shotgun who summed it up best, that game, in the fact that it's terrible for like the first few hours, like incredibly bad, and then it's almost, there's a point where you can tell that the actors, the voice actors who are reading the lines, suddenly realise that actually it's quite good. No, the opposite. They realise that actually it's not bad. And at first they're like massively phoning it in, and then the quality of the voice acting steps up because they realise that actually the story is actually quite good, and it becomes this thing.
Weird.
It's really weird.
That's amazing, though.
But there's a point about halfway through the game where there's a cut scene with some acting, and it's just like, this is great. Like, I mean, like, the animations are terrible. It's really shit, but it's really gripping.
Well, as a man who watches telly whilst on his computer while looking at another window, that sounds perfect to me.
So the problem is that the nature of the combat was that you actually had to concentrate quite a lot.
Oh, it was kind of
it's like
freeze time and do tactics, wasn't it? Yeah.
And it was quite hard, and I don't know if there was an easy option, but it was bollocks for so many reasons. But what I loved is the fact that it used all the Game of Thrones lore. It used houses that weren't massively in the books.
What was the justification for magic in it? Because it's like Lord of the Rings, isn't it? Whereas magic is such a sparse thing to come by.
Yeah, they don't really.
Well, to be honest, they kind of
that wildfire or whatever.
They
it's
kind of
called.
fudged that, and they kind of fudged it because it's all supposed to take place in the kind of weeks before the death of. Actually, if you haven't seen, the death of someone.
Yeah,
I'm trying to avoid spoilers.
There's quite a lot.
Just fucking watch Game of Thrones. It's a good show. And yeah, there's a theme within Game of Thrones that there's like the idea that magic did used to exist. So when they talk about dragons and stuff, they're not like, oh, dragons are a myth. It's like they know dragons existed. They've got these fucking big skulls of when they used to exist, but they've been dead for ages. And the whole one of the major themes in Game of Thrones that goes through the books is the idea of magic creeping back into the world for whatever reason.
just because of dragons, innit?
Or dragons.
Yeah.
Reawaken.
Or maybe the dragons are just a symptom of that. Who knows?
What? 3 eggs going into a fire and
Correlation or
hatching is a
causation?
symptom of magic returning to the world. No, those eggs were put.
Sounds saying when you say it like that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sense of this crazy world.
But yeah, like I say, it was this nice thing of having like lords. Like one of the characters you played was a lord who'd been off to lands, and it was really nice having all of the sense of the lore and stuff, and having a sense of the power relationships between the houses, but being like, you don't need to be having chats with like the head of the Lannisters and the Queen.
No, that's...
like there's so much intrigue in that world that
it's such a rich world. You could do anything that you wanted with it, really.
The one thing I did love about that Game of Thrones RPG, though, is there was one of the cutscenes early on in the game, and this was the point at which I still thought it was shit, but it made me think, hello, what's this? Was the fact that there was a conversation with the Queen, with Cersei, where your character, who was this good chap, being like, these are my lands, this man has taken my lands for me while I've been away, I demand retribution, I demand that I get my title and my lands back. And she basically said, listen, maybe if you could help me out, maybe if you could do some stuff for me, we could come sort of some arrangement. And you had this option to go, no, like, I'm a man of honour, and like, I demand this because...
The Ned Stark route.
This is mine, yeah. And literally, they just went, take him to the dungeons and leave him there. And it was game over.
Really?
It was a game that I realised, I don't know how many times in the game it happened, but I was there like just going, whatever, choose options. And then I realised that I was like, hang on a minute, this is a game where I can get game over from making the wrong conversation choice.
From being like an absolute knob-end to the Queen.
Yeah.
But it had this whole section after that where you had to actually go off with your brother, like your bastard brother, who now had all your lands. And he was like the bad guy. He was framed as the bad guy for the early game. And then the Queen says, listen, you two go off and sort this out, and then like I'll think about it. And it's like you basically end up having to work with the guy who is like a fucker, because the Queen says you have to. And then it has this weird thing where in conversations, instead of having good and bad options, like the kind of Mass Effect psychopath thing of being like, I'm either going to smile at you or push you out a window, it means that if you choose an aggressive route, then it means that your like bastard brother's taking over the situation.
Okay.
And if you choose a kind route or compassionate route, your character is. So you still get 4 dialogue options or 6 dialogue options, but
it's more evenly split.
It's from 2 different people.
That's interesting.
And the thing that made me feel really bad, and the thing that I thought was a really interesting idea, was the fact that I came to some situations where I was looking at the nice guy approaches and thinking, yeah, I don't think that's going to cut it. Like, and having like this guy who's an absolute prick stepping in and like trying to throttle them, because it's like,
I have such a problem with games like that, especially with Mass Effect, because they're very clearly labelled, that I always have to go for the Paragon decision.
Especially if you're trying to build your sort of XP in that area.
Yeah.
So of course you want to choose all the same thing all the time.
For like Mass Effect 2, like obviously you need to have high enough Paragon.
Because you want to unlock the special things on the other corner of the dialogue wheel, don't you?
Yeah, which is really bad, and I hate the fact that I
super
play
nice
that way.
guy option.
Yeah, oh my god, you won't believe how nice I'm being.
Check out this. You're lovely. Plus 5 more points.
That reporter, you just kiss your finger, then plant your fingertip on her lips. Let's not punch each other in this game. Hot reporter, baby lady.
It is difficult though. I guess you've got to have really good writing to pull that off.
Yeah.
It did a good job. Well, it did a good job of saying you're a badass either way, but you can be the nice or arsehole.
Yeah, it's just, I'm more disappointed in myself than in the game that I just constantly have to, like, I'd actually restart it if I felt like, it's annoying because there were times that I wanted to just fucking pistol whip someone and I was like, no, I can't because I have to play the good route.
You just reminded me of something like wanting, like, algorithms to like you.
Yeah.
I returned something to Amazon recently, and they made the process so easy and generous that I've bought about 10 things from Amazon recently just to make just to make some judgment of me inside their system actually like me again.
But it's funny because, like,
it's perverse.
that is mental.
It is a bit mad.
I'm sure.
However,
I'm sure that's the thing. That's got to be a psychological thing.
Well, however, going back to The Wolf Among Us, I read a pretty good article today, which was it sort of tied into a lot of things I was thinking about the latest episode, and that someone was saying the morality of that episode was sort of coloured by the fact that when they were playing it, they just wanted Snow to like them. So they were just doing things to sort of just get her approval on it. Like, and if she wasn't watching them, they would have behaved completely differently. And that's mad. That is mad. But like, it's like your in-game girlfriend. You don't want to rock the boat or anything.
Oh, wow.
The thing is, I think that's another thing that's a bit weak about it in a way. It's like it is a bit 2D, and it is like it doesn't really give you any other characters that you
can bounce off in that way.
You feel like you want them to like you. Like, I mean, the frog dude is like,
his little son though.
His son is adorable, to be fair. But I mean, I wish they'd like spent more time on the relationship with your pig flatmate.
Yeah, they never went back to that, right?
He's awesome.
Yeah, Colin was really fun, and like I think he comes back.
I forgot about him from the second episode. Yeah, the fact he was so big in the first.
Because what I loved about the Walking Dead series was the fact that it didn't devolve into that. Like, it didn't devolve into being like, oh, she's your girlfriend, so you're gonna be nicer. It was this thing of being like,
I was trying to like flirt with Carly like all the time, but she wasn't having any of it. So
do you remember the start of the second episode where it's like you've got like 2 boxes of cheese and crackers?
Oh god, that was horrible.
And it being like, oh, like I want to just give it to the people who I like. But you're like, maybe I should give it to the people who don't like me.
Maybe I should give it to Laurie because he's such a fucker. Like
he's a prick.
Yeah,
and he's a racist dick.
Yeah,
maybe I should give it to him and it'll be less racist. Yeah, and that could be, or maybe
wasn't it like there was a weird things of they noticed that messages like you give it to one person and it cuts to someone else says they noticed you fed a child. What? They hate children.
So you're feeding the children, are you?
Oh, nice.
Waste of resources.
They're the future, are they? Well, bollocks. I want a cracker.
I'd like to see them fighting for the future with their brute strength.
This is it. They're going to fend off the zombies when they come knocking.
I actually turned all that stuff off straight away when I was playing The Walking Dead.
Can you turn that off?
The
remember that.
I remember this. It's like fucking bollocks. Like it does. It as you say, it shows you the cracks.
Yeah.
And it annoys me. You can't do it on The Wolf Among Us.
I didn't know that.
It's really annoying because I don't want to see that.
No.
I don't like to know. And it's alright, to be honest, you already know because there's a weird loading. There's always a weird loading blip after a save.
Just as it happens.
And that makes you think, oh, alright, let's log that.
However, like, whether it says it or not, I haven't seen any return on that at all, yet, so...
And this is the thing, is like, I don't know, when I was playing through The Walking Dead, I was like, I think when I wrote the review of episode 1, I was like, it's going to be interesting to see how much these choices matter.
Yeah.
And then, when I realised they didn't, I thought, I don't give a shit, because actually... it matters to me, the choices I made.
Well, that's the thing.
Whereas in The Wolf Among Us, it's like, it's very pretty. I love being in the world, but it does all feel a little bit meaningless. And it does feel like, especially as I say, they're trying to egg you on to do stuff because they want to show you stuff. It's like having somebody leaning over your shoulder while you're playing a game going, oh, press this button, it's really cool when you press this button. You should press this button. You do this like cool fireball thing. Press this button. You're like, fuck off, leave me alone.
Have you been playing season 2 of The Walking Dead?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
I don't know. I kind of been avoiding it because of the fact that I don't like the premise.
I've been really split about it. I think I've decided now I don't really like the fact that you're playing as Clementine.
No, and that's why I was going to wait till the whole series was done. Yeah. Because I really dislike the core premise. It's not so much her. It's the way that everyone acts around her. Like it just breaks the illusion so badly. Like you've got adults that are like, telling this tiny child to go out and like
you do the dangerous thing because I'm sorry. I mean, we are more equipped to do it, but you are the protagonist.
It's absolutely mental. And then you've got this pregnant woman who's been knocked up by someone who's not her husband, telling Clementine about it, and you're like, she is not mature enough to deal with this shit. What are you doing?
Yeah, that's the whole thing in like the first season.
That should be an overheard conversation.
Right? It's like, come on, there are more elegant ways to deal with this sort of stuff.
Yeah. In the first season, the whole point was like everyone trying to hide stuff from her. Like,
Yeah,
everyone trying
I know.
to be like, oh, and she would still hear stuff, and then he'd be like, oh shit, she's seen this, I heard this. But you know, that's important. I mean, that's a big theme in The Walking Dead generally. That I'm watching the series is like them trying to protect the children, and not just from like the risk of death, but also being like trying to ensure they have like some sort of childhood.
It's the thing is as well, because you like I've played a couple of episodes now, you're starting to see that she's a little bit dead behind the eyes, and I don't know whether that's just the way I'm playing it, but like she's not the little girl that I once knew, and I'm like, fucking hell, like she's growing up and I can't protect her, and it's like all this shit's happening around her, and I'm like,
I mean, how old is she in this?
She's I think in the second season she's just turned 11. So she's still quite young.
That's not old enough.
No,
That's not murdering.
Yeah, well, she's racking up the kills now. Like, it's just, I mean, it's still good, but it definitely isn't as strong as the first season.
I mean, at least if they're going to do that, I mean, I say I've been watching the TV series, and it's like that one of the themes I thought was really interesting is the idea that if you have kids in survival mode for too long, then they do start to become like these sort of almost frightening killing machines, and you have to be like, oh shit, so we need to like...
one of my absolute favourite things from the first season was, it was, for me, all about Lee choosing between teaching Clementine what was right and what would keep her alive. And that was the whole, like, you had to decide whether you were going to teach her not to steal, to be good to other people, or, you know, was that going to get her killed in the end? Like, that was the whole thing. And now it's like that choice is gone. She just has to, she's just with horrible people, and she, like, you're just, well, there's no choice here. She's just going to, you know, backstab them as soon as she's got a chance, so.
Oh, just stabbing someone, because he will remember you did that.
He will remember you killed him. Forever. And ever and ever. I'm trying to think what else. I've developed a horrible addiction this week to Monster Hunter.
Oh god, that's one of those games that I really want to play, but no, if I do play, I'll probably not like it, or just fear for just feel the drop in front of me and thinking, if I get into this anymore, it's going to be a 99 hours game.
Yeah.
And 99 at the fucking least. Like, I know we mentioned Ari's put like at least 200 into it.
Yeah,
which is mental.
When I say 99 hours, I just mean the clock stops counting.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about Final Fantasy 7 sort of thing. Like.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it's like I've maybe stumbled off that cliff without noticing it, because it's a game I've had, I played it on my 3DS a bit and got into it a little bit, and then was like, this is interesting, I don't really get it, I don't really know what's going on, and then I've just gone back and dipped into it every now and then, and because I finished Bravely Default, I was like, well, I was going off on the
Bravely Default, that was a 99 hours game for me as well. Yeah,
I talked about this last week, but fuck me, when you said to me, we were recording Regular Features, the podcast that myself and you and two other people do.
You really should listen to Regular Features. It's a fun podcast.
It's an entirely different podcast to this, but it's a bloody good one. But before we were recording it, you were playing Bravely Default, and you just looked to me with a kind of fearful sincerity in your eyes and said, when you understand what it wants you to do. And I was like, oh, don't spoil it for me, but you were like, no. And then I kind of locked you down because I was worried that you were spoiling the plot, but then I got to that point in the game and I was like, oh fuck, like, I talked about it last week on the podcast that basically
do you know that gets you the bad ending?
Oh yeah,
I felt cheated like bollocks. The fact that I said that to you at that time, and I was so amazed, just like I've done what the game hinted at me to do, even though all signs were pointing towards go to this inevitable conclusion. I thought, oh, brilliant, I've broken you in the way you wanted me to.
Yep.
And this is brilliant. I'm bound to get the good ending. No, that's the way to the bad ending. That is bullshit, my friend.
Yeah.
Like,
the game tells you to get the bad ending.
Well,
pretty
there's
much.
something you've got to do to get to the end of the end game.
Yeah.
A motif from the earlier game is just people keep saying, don't be afraid to disobey.
Okay.
And like you go, okay, I'm not sure what you mean, but then you realise you have another. No, I'm not saying anything else because it is a spoiler. So
it is a spoiler, but it's that thing of like, it is this thing of like you get to a point in the game when like, I'm really good at not looking stuff up, and I've said it. I said last week, it expects you to repeat things to a degree that is just annoying. But it's that thing of being like, I don't like to look up about stuff about a game until I'm like at a point where I think it's fine, I'll do it now. And that was the point at which I googled it and just went, all right, what the fuck is like? What do I have to do to finish this game?
I'm doing this for the 4th time now.
Yeah, and then it's like you realise it wants you to repeat this thing like 6 times to get the proper ending. And I was like, fuck you. And I ended it, and the ending was such a disappointment. Like considering it's like, oh great, like those 10 hours I gave you were worth nothing.
How many endings are there? Just the bad and the good, or
Isn't there? There's true ending and bad ending. Yeah.
The true ending.
Fuck you.
It's like, why is it with...
And also, all that bullshit about... You've got everyone... In one of the worlds, the whole idea is there's different universes, multiverses, and in one of them, everyone finds their perfect counterpart that makes everything happy. And they just say, for no fucking explicable reason, yeah, I guess we just don't belong here. What?
Yeah.
The whole thing is you've understood that everything's
mental. It's mental. That bit in particular was like, oh, fuck this. Like, fuck this. This is just stupid. When it's like, hey, you've magically found a world. It's like, what is that? Oh, actually, I'm thinking it's like Rick and Morty. I've been watching a lot of Rick and Morty recently, and there's one of the episodes where it's like, to solve the problem of the fact that they've basically fucked up their world beyond recognition, they just transport themselves to a reality in which they've both just died, but everything else is normal, and so they just basically teleport themselves there, bury their own bodies, and then just carry on. I know, it's a great cartoon.
So I am conflicted because I kind of wanted to play this game, but now listening to you two, I'm like, is it worth it? It's fine,
but the problem is, because I said this, I'm repeating myself.
There's loads of stuff I love about it. As in, like, that thing that I first showed you, I think, was the obliterate power you get, which is just, for a game that kind of goes out of its way to respect your time and shorten the grinding process. Like, there's a power that you have to go down quite a long side mission chain to get it, but you can equip one of your characters with obliterate, which whenever you enter any non-boss battle, all the enemies instantly die.
Okay.
And you get full XP and like battle. Whatever the equivalent job points, isn't it?
It just does it. It just like it basically just goes. You don't have to do that anymore. You can just get experience, and it's such a shame.
Which means that you can actually grind by just walking around with your thumb and clicking on the.
I know. I mean, the thing is that it's almost like, what is it? I worry that there's like some sort of secret cabal of Illuminati based in the Japanese RPG sector that will murder people if they do not have an incredibly lengthy endgame for no reason. It's a game that goes against the entire point of doing that, and then just does it.
But they pull back on the whole fucking you don't need to repeat combat, but they make you repeat the story 5 times.
But it sounds like a really bloody conflicted game, because I remember you telling me the story about this bikini, right?
Yes, the bikini, the Bravo bikini.
Yeah.
The story in which that happens the first time is amazing, because it's kind of
you were like, yes, it's inverting like all my preconceptions about this.
Well, it's sort of like, I expect, Javi, you expect a kind of certain level of sexism, but the fact they took that thing and they subverted it and they played with it and let you think about it a little bit, it's just so unexpected and happy. And then you unlock it. And then you fucking unlock it for doing something later on. It's like, what?
Hey, now you can dress up your characters in the sexy bikini.
And like, wait a minute, no.
Yeah, you know that the idea of ogling like highly polygonal characters that we subverted
that look
earlier
like
on.
Children.
Yeah, well now you can actually ogle you. They do look like children. They look
like fucking children. I felt really embarrassed because I was playing it a lot of it at my girlfriend's, who I'm moving in with soon, and it was this thing of I was sitting in bed, I was just playing it, and she just referred to it because I'd almost like carefully stayed on jobs that didn't have the girls, because it's like some of the jobs are perfect. Like some of the jobs, it's like time mage, for example, is great. When you're a time mage, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. All time mages have the same outfits.
Yeah, but if you're a pirate, you get a love heart over your eye instead of a skull and crossbone.
God.
Yeah,
because ladies kill with love.
We do, yeah.
You poisonous bitches.
But it's like some of them are just like, I remember one of them, it's like, for like the for the element fencer or whatever, it's like the men look like these cool like Arabian warriors, and then the women are like belly dancers.
Yeah.
And it is like literally like so I'd be playing it just sitting in bed with my girlfriend playing it, and I'd be like carefully choosing jobs so that the women weren't dressed like that, because I know
really
but sword fencing is such a hot.
The thing is,
it's a good job to be using.
Yeah, of course.
I know, right?
Sorry, I'm
so hot right now.
Oh my god! Oh, belly dancers.
I just got to show a bit of skin.
I just got
No, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, my girlfriend doesn't play games.
Yeah.
And she doesn't really understand them that much, which I
Yeah.
found amazing, because she was like, she turned to me when I was still playing Brave Default after about a week and a half, and she was like, "Oh, you're still doing that thing where all those people line up in front of a dragon?" I was like, yeah, that's what these games are. Like,
Oh, you went round-
people just line up in front of a dragon.
It's
and then, like, she was like, it looks like when you're playing it, you're always doing exactly the same thing. And I'm like, yeah, no,
You were trying to unlock Dracula Castle, weren't you?
Yeah. I was indeed.
It's weird though, because like I've heard so many like guy friends talk about games that they're embarrassed to play with their other halves in front of. Like that's, I mean, I don't really get that obviously, but like it just seems really.
Well, no, it's more that I think if you understand games, right, then you
can-
understand
yeah.
that we put up with a lot of shit to get to the good
the
stuff.
good parts, yeah.
And sometimes that's like bugs and glitches, and sometimes that's just
It's a bit
straight
of
up
sexism.
misogyny or
Yeah.
sexism.
But when you have unlocked the Bravo Bikini happened, I just snapped it shut.
I was like, what am I doing?
That put me off.
Yeah, and that's the thing is,
the bad ending.
it puts me off, but also it's that thing of being like, you know, when my girlfriend's like, "Oh, what's this? Explain this to me."
Yeah.
It's like trying to explain the concept of why a JRPG is fun. It's quite difficult,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that would be made more difficult by explaining why I was playing
The
a
girls have to wear-
JRPG with prepubescent teens in bikinis. You know, and this is the thing is, it's like a lot of this argument. I've been embroiled in this in the past quite a lot in terms of fighting against this, but it's like I'm not saying that games that feature that are shit.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that that's there can be a bit embarrassing.
Yeah, but there's a certain level that you just deal with. I mean, like, you know, Tifa Lockhart is still one of my favourite characters ever, despite the fact that she wears next to nothing and has, like, the biggest fucking tits you'll ever see. Like, I still love her because I find her really fascinating, and all that is just a byproduct.
That's probably better than
think
sort of
yeah.
a straight bloke saying, "Oh, I love her because she's got massive tits and she wears skimpy clothes." You were probably appreciating, oh, maybe on a different level. I
I think
don't know.
it felt less bad almost back in the day when she was clearly like a teenager with skimpy clothing, but in polygons. I think there's something more frightening about modern technology, the fact that you realise just how much fucking effort people have put in to making those tits bounce in a silly way. I mean, that's like...
Make them muddy.
Oh god, like in
Who doesn't love a muddy tit?
like Dead or Alive, where you can roll them around and mud and stuff.
I just
Fucking
think,
hell.
I mean, how do you pinpoint the point at which Dead or Alive stop being like, "Oh God, look at them, that's pathetic, isn't it?" to being like, "Guys, you've got to stop doing this. It's fucking
No, but
creepy."
literally, you go into like the Xbox Live Marketplace any fucking given day, and it is like 90% fucking Dead or Alive.
I did that amazing image, didn't I?
Yeah.
I sort of just took screenshot to screenshot and just tiled
Like,
them all together.
They are fucking scraping the bottom of that barrel now, though. It's like gym class fucking Mary Rose. Like, it's tropical bikini
sexy
Mary
Santa.
Rose. Oh, it's
It's just
horrible.
like, you know, pornography.
Half in tampon outfit. That. Just go for it. Why don't you
No,
just
that
fucking go
is
for it?
literally not that far away from where they are right now. Like, they have done everything
That's
else.
the thing. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get how, like, when you mention these
What
things
do they
as well,
do? Do they just want to go? Like, I don't know why it needs to be like that. You've
I
got
don't
porn
know
for
who
fuck's
pays
sake.
for it.
Right.
You know,
but obviously people do because they are
I know,
churning it
because
out.
they're making it, and that's why, like, I kind of feel like whenever I get into these arguments, people go, "Oh, why are you trying to censor games and stuff?" It's like, why are you fucking spending so much money on this shit, you idiots? like pornography is widely available and mostly free.
That's it.
Fill
Like,
your boots.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like,
but I can't dress porn movies in the clothes I want to see them in.
You need to Google better, John.
Oh, maybe that's brilliant. Let's do porn. Let's start making porn where people wear green outfits,
And then you can
you can superimpose it on in post.
Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And we could sell them post-production DLC packs.
Yes, this is it.
download the smiley face nipple tassels now.
But it's just like, I don't know, if it is like a distant, like, polygonal tits of a character, somebody might be like, "Oh yeah," but then you'd be like, "Yeah," and that'd be comment over. If you're playing a game where it's like...
I'd play a game called Attack of the Distant Polygonal Tits.
I think that's all that
The
needs to be
thing is,
said on
because
that,
like
really.
no, like because I go into the indie marketplace like every couple of weeks because we have like an indie section in the mag, and oh my god, like the shit people come up with, like
It's on the Xbox Live indie
yeah,
games market.
there are
so.
some toxic little games on there, like
And that's why ID at Xbox, the curated approach is so good to begin with.
right.
Before you turn every poisonous little teenager's face into a developer.
I find myself weirdly drawn to them because I just want to know what goes on inside their head.
Some of them aren't that bad. Like, because there was one that surprised me by how good it was. It was called Tune Her Out. And I thought, I'm going to download this, and I'm ready to hate you because you're saying that women are an obstacle to you playing video games. But it was a really nice device because you had to play a game and also take stock of a conversation that was going on.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an arsehole game. It wasn't made by an arsehole, even though the sort of premise seemed to be.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, brilliant, you've won me over. You've actually introduced a brilliant mechanic of me trying to play a game and watch a conversation that's going on.
There was a game about being a drone operator that did that. It was like a free Flash game.
Oh, yes, I played that.
Yeah, that's
bleak as fuck.
It's very bleak, very intense. Called? I can't remember.
I played that for...
Unmanned, I think.
Unmanned, maybe. I think that's right, because I think I played that for One Life Left.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I think we might be both on there, but that's the same thing of being like, you're having to like do these like mini games whilst having conversations with people and stuff, and it was like basically the idea of having this split mind in two places, which is obviously like the whole point about it. It was supposed to be an art game about drone controllers, and it kind of makes sense.
I suppose it's a similar thing to Papers, Please as well.
Yes, it is. It's actually really worth checking out. I think it's called Unmanned. Check it out. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my thing with these guys is the same thing of like these fucking whoever's buying these Dead or Alive costumes, whoever's making these Xbox Live indie games. I used to get really fired up about it, and now actually I try not to. I try not to give it oxygen because I've realised they can't win.
No.
Because it's like every time you make a point and you stand up and you shout about it, like within the games sector anyway, if you have access to better platforms, that's useful. But generally speaking, it's like I make a point of it, but then it's like, I don't get angered by the reverse because it's like they haven't got microphones.
Honestly, yeah, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't make me angry. It's just I just struggle to comprehend it. Like for the most part, like I don't feel threatened by them because like come on.
No, honestly, it's not that makes me angry. It's sometimes the fact that when you bring up the points, you get this backlash.
Yeah, absolutely. Like
the anti-social justice warrior backlash.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah. Or that I saw a comment recently that really boiled my blood. It was about the whole Metal Gear Solid Ground Zero's rape tape thing.
The Paz thing.
It was someone that actually commented towards the author of that article that it was a good rape scene, which I found absolutely mind-blowing, right? It's like
the Ria Garcias. Yeah, that was it was a good piece of it. I read it and it made me think about it in a different way. I mean,
absolutely. But I didn't know that existed before that piece. Like, because I haven't. I mean, I played the game a little bit, but I haven't finished it yet. And I was like, what the fuck?
It wasn't Ria Garcias. I think you got your names mixed up. It was somebody else, was it?
Oh God, not Ria Garcias. Introspective.
Introspective,
yeah. I know you got your.
Am I getting the Ria Jenkins mixed up with?
Yes, with
someone's girlfriend.
Yes,
sorry.
It's fine. I just thought because I knew you knew it wasn't her, but I just thought, that's it exactly. Whenever you write something like that, you get these nutters, and that used to get me so angry. But now I realise it's like it doesn't matter.
Well, they're shouting into a void, really.
Well, that's the thing is, I've never met anyone who's actually paid for their skill or for their thoughts or their cognition. I've never met anyone who is paid on a professional level for any kind of ability who has those opinions, which makes me realise it's like they don't have a microphone. They're never going to have a microphone. All they have is numbers. Yeah. And we will win. Yeah. And it's like, they've already lost. It's like...
Well, that's why they get so irate, right?
Well, that's it.
Yeah. But it's
the loss of privilege feels like oppression. That's that kind of...
That's exactly it. Shit. As I can comfortably say to them, fuck yourselves, guys, because you haven't got a microphone. Anyway, let's do some... you did it.
The very thing we're talking into now, you losers.
I've become really immature about it now. I feel like it's not worth... I've had so many debates with these guys, it's not worth actually even, like... talking to them. It's just like fuck you. Anyway,
MRA people don't deserve the time.
No, they don't. They do not deserve any more of my time. They've already had
a little wet flannel to be pressed over their entire face.
Yeah, I go with that. Anyway, first question. We'll whiz through this one. What do you think is the best use of procedurally generated anything you've ever played? What's the best game you ever played that's had procedural generation?
I'll say Spelunky just out of default, just because it's the one I've played most and the one I enjoyed most and the one I've seen all the systems gel together, and I'm sure there's cooler things to say. But I'm like Aoife, I'm not a massive fan of it.
I'm really not a fan of it. I really don't like... as soon as I see the words procedurally generated, it sends off alarm bells in my head, because I like games to be crafted, like, you know, the best that they can be. And when you see procedurally generated, it's like, there's not, you know, it's not like the game world is just going to be sort of a slapdash of just different things thrown together. It's not going to feel
this time
like
I
a cohesive whole.
Mind, but then again, you do get the things like Splunky. I've played it so many times, and you just
Spelunky and Terraria, I think, are, you know, and you know, Minecraft as well. I mean, they're a little bit different in that
Minecraft's, yeah, that's sort of
it's you know.
I get the opposite thing. If I like the way they feel like games, and the fact that, you know, it's this combination of factors, and the more you play it, you start to get a feel for it, and you start to be like, oh, this is really rare. This is really I need to do this here, and
you start
I like to think that somebody else has made this, that what I'm seeing in front of me, that they have made it a specific way to feel you know, like a specific like experience. You know, I don't like it to feel random.
No, I get you. I was saying with that when I was doing that email interview with the guy who makes Hyperlight Drifter, I think it's Machine Heart, and the fact that I asked he says that Diablo is one of his influences for the game, and I said, so does that mean you're doing procedurally generated stuff? And he went, well, no, that doesn't. Well, we want to tell a story. We want you to have this experience.
Yeah.
So it procedurally generated stuff wouldn't suit what we
You
want
can't
to tell
do
you.
that.
To a smaller extent, maybe. I mean, things like Payday 2, where they you know, they have the same areas, and it's changed around very slightly every time, so that you know, you can't sort of plan ahead all that much. You know, you do have to do a little bit of reconnaissance.
That's necessary to make the game replayable.
Right, exactly. I think that to me, it represents the limit of how much I'm willing to put up with it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, I know what you mean, and I feel like with some things, but I mean, especially with anything that's supposed to have a narrative, like I quite liked, for all of its faults, I quite liked Rogue Legacy.
God, sorry. Yes, Rogue Legacy.
But then it tried to have that story, and it was like diaries, but then because of the fact that my how good I was at the game didn't really obviously go with the difficulty in the way it was expecting, it meant I'd unlocked all of the diary entries like a good 4 or 5 hours before I got anywhere near the end of the game.
And also, like, with Rogue Legacy, it always felt to me like it was just the rooms being plugged together in different ways.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure exactly how procedural the rooms themselves were.
It was fairly, like, I mean, I'd say...
I just like the powering up at the beginning.
That's it.
That's the bit that really got me.
That's it. I loved it, but it was, like, there were lots of things about it that weren't great. And I'm sure the developers would agree with that as well. I think it was, like, not amateur, but it was, like, not exactly, like... done with the kind of precision that hides the seams. I think the game that I keep going back to at the moment, I love roguelikes for some reason. I don't know why, just because I keep
playing them on my mobile, and there's not really a good roguelike I've wanted to play on my mobile yet.
I've been playing FTL Advanced Edition, actually. I talked about this in the Ghost podcast, the one that was deleted by the Ghost, and I love it. I've played it more of it now, and the stuff they've had now, like you can do mind control, so you can be like, you know, get the man in their engine room to suddenly start like pulling their engines apart instead of like manning it, and you can like get a cloning bay in your ship, so you can basically just, instead of having to worry about sending like men over to their ship on a teleporter to beat up their crew and murder them, you can then be like, just send them out to murder them and be like, oh, my men got killed, it's all right, they'll be out of the cloning bay in a minute.
Yeah,
and you can basically just have an infinite, and it's basically, I love FTL because of the fact that every time it gives you slightly different things and you end up like devising a brand new strategy, you're like, you never go into it being like, this game, I'm going to do this. It's more like you early on, you're like, oh, I've got this. And you'd be like, you use the combination of what you've got and what you aim for to like try and build a new technique for.
I've only ever played it once, but like it was just so good. But I got right to the end bit, and it was only in the last sort of sector that it beat me. Obviously, I named my entire crew after the crew of Serenity. But,
you can just do some incredibly twattish things. Like one of the things I like to do at the moment is just that you just like get a couple of EMP cannons on the ship and just not bother with lasers, just EMP, and just like keep hitting their shields with EMP until the shields are down. Then get one of your EMP cannons to just keep hitting the shields so the shields can't regenerate, and then get your other EMP cannon to just keep hitting the generator that makes oxygen on their ship, and then just go and make a cup of tea, because it will take about 5 minutes of real world time, but eventually they will, just because their oxygen's constantly off, they will all just suffocate. But then because you haven't just damaged their ship in the slightest,
you can go on board the bugger.
You get shitloads of resources because it's like the ship's intact, what they got.
Nice.
And it's just like, that's the sort of thing really where when I first started playing it, I was like, oh, this is like a Star Trek Simulator, and then the more I played it, I'm like, no, it isn't. This is like you get to be the twats they bump into on Star Trek when Picard's like...
It's totally Firefly, because you're going in and you're like, yeah, it's fucking awesome.
It is good. So yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I think for anything that's supposed to just be
that's a good example, actually.
That's a good example. Okay.
Fair play.
I think we've gone through the wall, so I'm gonna jump straight to a question here. Which developer do you think is the sexiest?
We were talking about this today, actually, in the office. I swear to God. Like,
I just sat back and just started thinking about sexy blokes.
I think it was Ken Levine that kicked it off, right?
Ken Levine is always... Just because you can't meet Ken Levine.
Yeah.
You can't report on an interview with Ken Levine without commenting on his muscular frame, his broad shoulders. Hello, I'm Polygon.
They do seem to, people do like to sort of describe the man rather than the everything.
And also the fact he was carrying
the brain.
Yeah, but it's also,
I couldn't help but notice he'd read a book, which to me marks him out as apart from the rest of humanity.
I would go in for a bit of Levine, but also,
God, yeah,
but then that swan dived into. We then Googled images of Troy Baker in mocap suit. I just wanted to see his butt. I just wanted to see what it looked like.
Oh, Vaz, the person who plays Vaz in real life. Is this developers only or actors? So,
it's supposed to be developers, but I mean, it's difficult because developers have lots of people. You know?
Yeah.
Well, the guy who played Vaz was who
is in
Mondo.
Yes, he's in Orphan Black as well, and he's pretty hot. Yeah.
Dan Hay from Ubisoft, also a hot, great, big rumbling bear of a man.
Abby Hep from Respawn.
Yeah,
she's pretty hot.
Yeah.
She's pretty hot.
She's really cool, actually.
Yeah,
I've met her a couple of times. She's fucking well sound.
Yeah, and she actually voices one of the characters in the game as well.
Does she?
Yeah, she's got
I'm
really
sorry,
good
you're
voice.
excluding me talking about how hot women.
Sorry.
Sorry, Lord. God, you can't have the world always laid out for you.
I know, right? Privilege, jeez.
And finally, let's go for this one. This is regarding one of our Twitter nicks, which I assume is log with @disappointment. What are your most disappointing game endings and why? Bravely Default for me.
Straight back to Bravely Default.
Yeah.
Sorry, that fucking.
I should argue, like
99-hour games, they wound you more harshly.
I think that's the thing, is I
yeah.
have to say, like, because I feel bad because we've only recorded 4 episodes of Daft Souls and I've spent 2 of those in a row bitching about the end of Bravely Default, but it's only because I love the game so much up until that point at which I felt quite deeply betrayed.
You do both sound really wounded.
I'm so angry. It makes me angry thinking about it.
It did so many things right.
Yeah, it seems like it fell at the last hurdle after you'd invested so much time in it.
Yeah.
Which is quite difficult.
It spent the whole time being like, I'm not like other JRPGs. I'm not like them. And then just goes, actually, apart from the one thing that's really bad about them, like the end that never ends.
I know you've been hurt, but I won't hurt you.
Yes.
Oh, is that true? And how come you hurt me?
Why do you keep doing this to me? Disappointing endings. Oh, I don't know.
Mine is Bioshock Infinite.
Oh, yeah, no, I think so as well.
Yeah,
actually.
I thought it was deeply disappointing.
I think because actually, again,
it's more disappointing because everyone loves it so much.
And that's why I would nibble Ken Levine's bellend during the blowjob.
Yeah, just give it a little bit of
a little nip,
so that he knows that we're not. Yeah,
just so you know. Not cool, mate. You shouldn't have done that.
You shouldn't have done that. You done fucked up.
I think the same, just because it's like, again, I was talking about this today, just being like, it makes you fucking, like, do so much boring shooting because
you think there's going to be some fucking mind-blowing
you get to a point
payoff.
where you're like, oh, it's all going to be about a big twist, and then you get to it and it's like, really?
First of all, I saw it coming a fucking mile off. Second of all, I just don't like it when games don't play within the rules that they've set out for themselves.
Yeah.
Like, and then it thinks it's cleverer than it is, and and the annoying thing is a lot of people think it's cleverer than it is as well. And then they say you don't get it, and then it's like, no, actually,
yes,
I think you'll find I fucking do get it, and I get it better than you do.
That's the thing. That is the exact same thing. When I put up the video where I was like, this game's not as good as it should be. Most of the people in the comments going, oh, I obviously didn't get it. It's like, look, do you want me to get a mark?
Yeah. Honest to God, like, I love quantum theory. I love reading into all this stuff. I will tell you why it doesn't fucking work. Like, oh, no.
Having said that, though, I just remembered another... Drew Holmes, who was a writer on Infinite, he's also one of the people I fancy, so...
oh, sweet.
If you were listening to that, Drew, just...
sorry, but...
Don't worry, Aoife doesn't like your game. I couldn't step in to defend you, but you're very pretty.
Give you a little kiss on the forehead to make it feel better.
Oh, you've ruined my chances, Aoife. Why are you always doing this, you cock-blocking cow?
I'm such a cockblock. I can't help it.
Shit game. We don't want you. It was Drew. Get out of our house.
No,
Right.
I'm helping you because now he's going to be distraught. He's going to need someone's loving arms.
I'm on my way, Drew.
She's an evil wingman. And on that cliffhanger, thank you very much for joining us once again on the Daft Souls podcast. I've been joined, as I say, by Aoife Wilson.
Hello, bye.
And John Blyth.
Hello, who you'll also know from Matt Lee's and the Regular Features podcast.
Yes.
That you should also listen to.
You should fucking listen to regular features.
Yeah, you should.
Better than this. Bye.